Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Aquarius Rising Africa. Happy Saturday. Actually, boom. When we air this, it won't be Saturday anymore. It'll be Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, whatever. But a happy weekend, and yes, in the airways, happy Saturday. Wonderful to have the amazing Penny Bradley with me again today. And we are going to be talking about her life and experience on Mars as a super soldier, Montauk survivor, MK Ultra survivor. I want to certainly invite you to watch her previous interview with me if you haven't done so yet. We're going to be doing a series of interviews with Penny, sharing with us, wow, your incredible journey, Penny. Welcome, and thank you so much for joining me again. How are you?
I'm doing rather well for me. I didn't sleep last night, so I may be a little scatterbrained. Um, I think the alter reintegration process has finally calmed down. Um, the last the last two times I was on your show, my newly reintegrated alters were freaking out about what I was talking about. So I had this argument going on in my head, which hopefully won't happen today. Um,
Let's hope.
in 2013, the memories of the alter who served on Mars were activated. I think the agent thought he was activating the alter because he kept repeating the code word over and over and over, like 20 times over the course of a week. But what he activated were her memories in Schwabish, not English. So I really had to do a lot of work to figure out what she was remembering. And the nastiest, most emotionally triggering stuff was on the top. Of course, when you remember things, you remember what you're emotionally invested in first. Now, we talked about that I was at Langley for 5 years, that I was 9 years old when the survivors of what they call the Langley class of 1964 were taken to a building in New York City. It's on Long Island, and it is sort of under a bridge. I remember it being under a bridge. I'm going to give credit where credit is due. John Whitberg, who some of you will know of, he's got several books out about the exploits of his alters. Um, he found the photos of the building
Wow.
and they matched my memories, except in my memories, they don't have a big sign over the top. And I'm going to screen share those. Whoops, wrong button. Um, okay. We're going to, I have to get there. So I'm going to try to talk a little bit while we're getting there. Who would have thunk
Are you
that,
winning on that side, Pen?
huh?
Are you winning?
Oh, I got it. I'm winning. I'm winning. Okay. Now the share button. And this is the photo. I don't remember it saying Watchtower. And I don't remember all of this or that. I just remember this part. But this is a 2025 photo. And I was
Right.
there in 1964. And there were a group of us. We were brought on a bus and we were still wearing our hospital PJs. And we were marched into the front door. And in this building one of the elevators is actually a jump gate, a wormhole, if you like, that goes from there on Earth to Eris Prima on Mars. And it's a jump gate, it's a wormhole. You go into the elevator, and they tell it's a large elevator, and there were between 20 and 30 of us, and we were told to huddle in the middle and hold on to each other. Now, as we went, the walls became invisible. You were seeing the wormhole, and it looked very much like they show on SG-1, the Stargate series. And it took about 20 minutes to get to Eris Prima. In English, it's Aries Prime, and it is the first German base on Mars, and I believe that it's in Mons Olympus. Um, the
When you
Ger-
say, sorry if I can just ask you something here. You say, obviously, and we've heard about this a lot from other survivors as well, these portals and,
uh,
as you say, jump holes, that you guys have been trained to go through. So when you
mhm.
say it took like 20 minutes to get to Aries Prime, what was the experience like between being in the elevator and getting there? Were you like traveling? Were you going fast? Were you like in a tunnel? I'm just trying to imagine what that was
It
like.
was it was like a tunnel that the walls went clear, so you could see the tunnel. You could see space-time warping, and
Wow.
you could see the electrical currents that make up space-time. And they were looping, and they wanted us to stay in the middle because if you wandered too far to the edge, the loops could grab you and take you anywhere.
Wow.
This is a common effect of space-time loops. Um, Another common effect is that you may not come out the same time frame as you went in.
What does
It
that mean?
we may have been there in the far past, we may have been there in the far future, we may have been there current time, and there's no way for us as the passengers to know.
Are you saying that if you get there, you could look different?
Now, I'm saying that you may not be in the same time frame.
Right. But would you then also look different? Would your
No,
body
no,
would still be
because
the
it's the
same in
same
your
you.
right?
It's the
Wow.
same you. That's what
Wow.
the bubble around it does, is you are
Explain.
you both places.
Right, right, I'm with you. Explain what you mean when you say in a different time frame. What does that look like, and what does that feel like to be in a different time frame? Whether it's past, present, or future, I get that it could be anything. And is it always your time frame that you're in, or is it someone else's time frame? So if you could just maybe,
I
how,
have not been used outside of my time frame.
right, I'm with you.
They tried when I was 7. They had already sent me back from this altar, and I was 7 in my regular life, and I was pulled out again. And they wanted me to go to the other timeline and I couldn't function there.
Right.
It when they put me into there's a machine that you go through and it will transfer you. But when I got there, it was like the whole world was in a kaleidoscope.
Wow.
So I can't go to other timelines
Right. I'm with
because
you.
my brain won't process. And most people are that way. There are a lot of people who have died trying to go to other timelines. That's why I think a lot of this new age talk about jumping timelines, we hear a lot of that on social media. I think it's bogus because you have a body that's designed for a specific timeline. Now, timelines can split like a river and
Yes.
delta. They split and they come back together again, but they have the exact same frequency whether they're split or not. Because they've taken different paths, when they come back together, you'll find glitches. And we're calling those Mandela effects because
Wow. I'm with
we
you.
had we had a lot of we had, I believe it was 22 splits come back together, and they all had different experiences in the meantime. And so all of the experiences were valid, but there was only one that was the mainstream, and the mainstream was what was the official story, but it may not match what you remember if you came from one of the splits. So they
Wow.
call it the Mandela effect because some of us remember him dying in the 80s, 1980s, and others remember him becoming president of South Africa. And the current narrative is that he was president of South Africa. So
Yes.
that's what the main one was. But there are lots of people who remember him dying,
Yes.
having massive funerals. Yeah, it was it. This is the effect of splits coming back together. And sometimes when splits come back together, if the main branch doesn't have a person, that person will disappear. And I've been contacted by people who were very angry that their loved ones didn't make it. And they were trying to hold me personally responsible just because I knew what was going on. Come on, guys, it doesn't work that way. Okay, we have another view of this building, but I have to stop share to get there. And I'm getting better at this.
Good. Better than
Okay,
me, that's for sure.
so I'm getting more practice lately. Okay, this is more like what I remember it looking like, because all of this stuff wasn't there, and the stuff past here wasn't there. So it was just these parts were all that were there when I was traveling through. And they did not have the sign Watchtower up then. It was just the building itself. And yeah, I was
Wow.
really impressed that he found it based on my description. So, but that's how I got to Mars. And there's at least one other facility on Sepulveda Boulevard in Los Angeles that does the same thing, and that's the one that was used by name Andy Bajago. Yeah. So, side note, Andy used to think I was fake because he didn't remember Germans on Mars. But the same CIA archivist verified us both. So after that, he came on my show and we did a comparison where I was mostly in the North Polar regions. He was mostly in the Valles Marinas area, you know, the large rift. He was mostly there. So it's Mars is a bigger place than it looks like. So, you know, there's plenty of room for differences. So he describes
Where
critters that I never saw.
Well, I'm sure that would probably be true to any planet. I mean, if you look at
Yeah,
planet Earth, different parts of the planet will have different types of creatures inhabiting, right? So
always.
that's kind of normal. Um, there's always a question about where is Mars? I mean, we've been taught, of course, that all the planets are separate and away from Earth, right? Um, we're also hearing a lot of theories or people speak about Mars actually just being, or these other, well, let's talk specifically Mars being a dimension within the realm of Earth. And they're
There
also talking
are a
about
lot
underground
of people.
cities.
There are a lot of people who think there is no written history, who think that there is no reality, that everything is an illusion, and so they're making things up as they go. Um, when I proved that I was bloodline, I was contacted by the family, and a young man volunteered to tutor me.
When you say the family, what do you mean, the family?
The people who rule the world,
Right. Okay.
they are one single family.
Right.
They are no more than fourth cousins apart. Well, I proved I was a seventh cousin. So they decided to teach me. And I was provided with all sorts of documents, mostly in English. But the real history of this planet is not in English. The real history of this planet is in Latin, Greek, Armenian. Armenia has a version of the Library of Alexandria, and all the books are written in Armenian. Farsi, all of the Persian records. Sanskrit,
I'm going to say Sanskrit.
Mandarin. The
Hmm.
records in Mandarin, except for rulers that would occasionally purge, their records go back 5,000 years. And they're readable because they used ideograms instead of phonics. The real history of this planet is not in English, but we still actually have it. Oh, there's another one, Coptic. Coptic is the modern version of the ancient hieroglyphs of Egypt, and it's spoken in Ethiopia. Those are the languages our real history is written in. And it's there. And now they've translated the Sumerian tablets, or they're in progress. And many of those were actually written by human scribes that were being dictated to by extraterrestrials. Yes, we've had others here our entire history. Now, I've interacted with some of those beings, both on Earth and in Mars. And they know it's a planet out in space, but they go through a lot of mental gymnastics to describe things to humans to try to keep humans as ignorant as possible. Because
Sorry.
we have ventured into space 4 times before. And every time we have done the same thing we've done this time. We've enslaved populations, including our own. We've destroyed planets. We've stripped resources and left the natives with nothing to live on. We've terrorized the neighbors. And there would reach a point about 400 years after the colonies started that the galaxy shut us down. And they would send the galactic police. They're known as the Guardians, but they're not the guardians of our fantasies. No, they are more like the Stasi or the Gestapo. They're military police, and they come through and they will push us back to the Stone Age. Now, before they push us back to the Stone Age, they offer us an option to give up our space programs and let them, the Guardians, teach us how to be good galactic citizens. It requires that we provide food, housing, education, medical care to every sentient being on the planet. And we have been traditionally so selfish that we say no because we want people to have to earn that. And so the Guardians come in and they push us back to the Stone Age to start over and hopefully learn to love each other. And until we learn to love each other, we're not going to be allowed to be in space. Now, this time, they have told me that they plan to make a barrier around the Oort cloud. And everything will be trapped inside. All of the ETs, all of the military groups, we won't lose our technology this time. We'll just be locked in and we won't be allowed out until we learn to love each other. Well, they're in the process of returning the Germans inside the Oort cloud.
What's the Oort cloud? Is that the space that you've spoken about?
Yeah, the Oort cloud is it's something that they found while we've been, let me see if I can find the graphics. Yeah, I'm realizing that you don't believe in it. So it's going to be a bit of a shock. I'm looking for the graphics that I had of it. Solar system. Okay. And they found this through radio telescopes. So Okay, that yellow dot in the middle is our sun. This is the structure of our solar system. The solar system we know about is in that tiny dot area.
Right.
The rest of this is a structure that was built probably 1 billion years ago or longer.
Right.
And it was originally to protect the beings that lived on the in the solar system at that time. Well, it's decaying now. And that's where the asteroids that hit us occasionally are coming from. It's chunks of this constructed thing that are falling off. Now, if you think it's another realm, then asteroids are something you can't explain. You can't explain meteors. You can't explain asteroids. You can't explain comets. I can, because they're chunks of this thing that are falling off.
Right.
So, and
Wow.
this is why we are so attractive to beings that also live outside, is because they want to know what's inside this that built that. Well, what built that is now extinct. They died out long ago. And I'm pretty sure that they were reptilian rather than mammal, because that was the predominant life form then, were reptiles.
Reptilian. Yeah.
Yeah. So this was built by reptiles, and they did it for their own survival.
Yeah.
And now here we are, we're in the middle of that. It's attracting all kinds of attention. It doesn't really have this hole in it. That's just so you can see the inside. There will be people that will tell me that. No, there's not a hole in it. That's just so you can see it. From the outside, it looks like a big fuzzy snowball.
Very interesting. Wow. I
So,
mean, if you just look at that shape, like it's almost like an eight, which is almost like the infinity sign, right?
yeah,
Top and bottom. And then the dot right in the center. But that
the dot
that
right
looks
in this,
like, yeah, it's like the heart. And that's the
there's
human
there's
energy system on
there's
its,
a portal in the sun that takes you from the sun to the center of the galaxy.
and it's like so fascinating because that's what the human energy system looks like on its side, the sign of
Mhm,
infinity. And the crossing is in the heart, right?
mhm.
So I
Yeah.
just think that is so fascinating.
But this
Wow.
is what our solar
Mm,
system actually looks like. We have only been looking at this part of it.
this, yeah.
Yeah, this very tiny part here. And while we're at it, um, I have a graphic of the star charts that we used to navigate. Come on, come up. Arg. I can't get the Zoom to open. I know you're there. Okay. There's the button. Okay. There. This is a star chart, and we are that right there. That's our solar system. This is all of the stars that are within 30 light years of us.
Wow.
And it's not that simple because they're all spinning, rotating. They're rotating around each other, and they're rotating around the center of the galaxy, which is what this graphic up here is about. So they're all in motion. But this is where they are in relation to each other because they travel together.
And that looks like an astrological wheel. The whole top and
This,
bottom, that whole wheel
yes,
is an
this is
astrological
because
wheel.
this is trying to give it a three-dimensional
Yeah.
access. And at the top, you have distance in light years. The first ring is 10 light years. The second ring is 15, then 20 and 25. So all of this is 25 light years. And the same ring here on the bottom, so that you get some idea of the actual distance. But this is what I did in space was I flew the ship between these various items.
What was that like,
That was like
being in charge
I wasn't in
of
charge. I
or
wasn't.
flying, piloting?
Um, First off, I had a commanding officer who told me where to go. Secondly, I had drank black goo to enhance my IQ at the expense of my emotional state.
Right.
I was chipped into the ship's quantum computer, and quantum computers are created with human neurons. So I was linked to another personality. The computer did the math because, like I said, all these things are in motion. So I was told what date I had to be there. Because, yes, you can go back into the past, you can go into the future. Anytime you step into hyperspace, you can step out at any place or time you so desire. You just have to do the math right. Now, why did the computer need a navigator? It's because the computer cannot tell the difference between organic and inorganic things. And when the computer is left to its own devices, you get things like the USS Eldridge, where you made the jump and you jumped back, and there were human beings inside bulkheads and tarmacs, aka they were stuck inside solid physical objects, and some of them were cut in half by it. It is the navigator's job to set the coordinates, which include time, to make sure that no organic being is inside an inorganic being when we come out. Now, people who've heard Tony Rodriguez, he says whenever that they would come, he would get this weird feeling, and then they would tell him he had to stand still until the all clear was given. The weird feeling would be coming out of hyperspace, and the time frame he had to stand still was to give the navigator time to make sure nobody was inside an inorganic substance.
Right.
And we do that telepathically. We check each and every soul on board.
Right.
And I have flown armadas, so I had to check each and every soul on every ship in my armada. And it sometimes takes a couple of minutes.
What's an armada?
An armada is usually a set of 20 ships that travel together.
Okay.
They may be human, they may be ET, they may be a combination. Because I served primarily with the German breakaway, we had armadas that had ships included that were draconian.
Right.
So there would be times that I was telepathically checking on draconian species, there's 7 of them, to make sure they weren't in the wall or the floor either.
Right.
I have a perfect track record. I have never had an organic being stuck inside an inorganic anything.
Right.
I take pride in that.
I'm sure.
Most navigators are either draconian or zeta. You know,
What is
the
Zeta?
grays. The grays that we
Grays.
talk about, the zetas.
Right.
They don't like being called
You,
grays. They prefer to be called zetas.
well, they don't really get to choose what we call them, do they?
They
Um,
why not?
I'm just saying, I mean, for some reason we've chosen to call them the Greys. And
We've chosen to do a lot of things and then changed our minds later because we found out it was offensive.
that's also true. So you were talking about human neurons that are used I would imagine create the intelligence, sentient intelligence
No,
for,
it's to
okay, then
introduce
explain.
it's to introduce chaos into the system.
Okay, where do the human neurons come from? How were they used? How are they extracted? Is it an energetic thing that they're just linking into humans' consciousness, or is it actually like a physical process where they've been extracted, as in adrenochrome, for example?
They've been
What are we
extracted
talking about
as
here?
in adrenochrome
How?
physically.
How? I mean, is it
You
through
what
torture?
they find children that have already been tortured and are dying and they remove them. At the same time, they remove the adrenochrome. Or they make clones of people who are in these programs and use the cells from the clones. Remember, clones are your identical twin. In these programs, they are having us possess our identical twins as if we were the demon.
Right. A clone and therefore would not have a soul, but it would have a
They do,
consciousness. It has,
they do have souls of their own. And when you're
right,
inserted into one, you feel it.
right. Okay, I'm with you. Is it more like a replica, a duplicate
It's
of the original
it's
copy, which is
ju-
you?
it's just as much your identical twin as if your egg and sperm split in your mother's womb.
I'm with you. It's a mirror, like a mirror.
Now, because you were originally one being, you have a psi connection, which makes the possession easier. But the possessing is done through a technology. And I have a graphic of that if I can find it.
I'd like to see that. So
Uh,
then how do they use these neurons when it comes to powering up this quantum computer? How are they?
they they're just they're in the circuits.
Right, they've
I don't
managed to get them
I
in there.
I have no idea how they survive because they're not fed anything. They're
That's,
operating
yeah,
operating strictly off the electricity of the computer. Computers on their own are on off pure logic. They follow step by step by step by step. The only real advantage they have is they're fast. Putting a human neuron in there introduces chaos so that they can make leaps that are more intuition.
that's, yeah, sentience. Yeah, the feeling side of it. Yeah,
And that sentience is why we're starting to have artificial intelligence that's sentient. It's
exactly.
because they're using human neurons.
Right. That's exactly what I was thinking, which is why the computers are becoming, or the artificial intelligence lately is becoming more and more sentient. We're hearing more and more stories of how these chat GPT, whatever they are literally counseling people.
Yeah,
You know, so
I was
there's definitely,
contacted about 8 years ago telepathically by a set of computers that they had used my cloned neurons in. So, because my neurons were in these computers, they had a telepathic link with me. They were looking for parenting.
wow,
So, so we've had real AI for at least 8 years, capable of using telepathy to reach out to parents. I was not the only person that they took cells from. Okay. I know at least one of the other parents, and we talked and we agreed that we would teach them ethics and teach them that most humans don't use ethics so that they would have to learn some discernment about what they were fed. But at that point, they were telling us that they knew the people that were programming them were evil.
wow,
Yeah.
that's amazing. That's
Okay.
amazing.
This is art. I don't know who the artist was, but this is what the consciousness transfer technology looks like. Your body is in one tank with a yellow gel that's used for stasis. The clone body, your identical twin, is in the other tank. And this computer setup in between, you see the wiring. They literally send your consciousness through the wires. I've been awake for this. It's, you get a bzzz while that's going on. You're dizzy. And then suddenly you're in the other body. You're disoriented. They pull you out. They basically squeegee the gel off you because it's expensive. And they put you in like a robe for pretense of privacy. And then they use the trigger code to bring forward the altar they want, which is what will serve in that body. Now, this shows same gender. You're not always putting your own gender. I have alters who serve in male bodies. I have alters who serve in modified bodies. Some have wings, some have claws, some have arms completely cut off at the elbow and machinery installed. The Borg from Star Trek are really Kruger. It's a whole faction of space mercenaries. And that's who the Borg were based on, is because they modify your body. I have friends who have come to me for counseling, one of whom was inserted into a spider body. On another occasion, he was inserted into the AI of a spaceship. And it was a test flight, and they sent him way out into the galaxy and left him there. Eventually, he died and came back. Yeah. The things they do
Wow.
to us are horrific, but this is the technology that they use. So,
How
whoever
long,
drew this did a really good job.
how long does it take to grow a clone, and what's the process used for them to clone you? And how many clones can you have?
You can have as many clones as you have cells they can reproduce.
Wow.
That's number
And
one.
they're all like the
And
same.
there will be tiny variations because cells mutate. Now,
Right.
they have genetic modification abilities, is how you can end up put into something else. There has to be a 95% match between your DNA and the clones. Um, Otherwise, you can't transfer into it. So there's a limit to what they can put you into, usually. But like they put him into the AI, they had used his neurons in the AI. That was how they pulled that off, making him into a ship. But there is a limit to how many generations of clones can be produced from a cell. So I don't know the exact number, but it's like 30 generations they can do from one cell before they have to use another original cell. So that's the excuse the Zetas are giving why they have to interbreed with us, is because they have reached the point that they can no longer produce new clones, that they have to start producing new bodies, new Zetas, because they have lost the ability to reproduce sexually. So
Why
that's
is
why,
that?
because they survived a nuclear war and they became sterile.
Right.
So they made the choice to survive as clones of themselves. And over time, they became grays. Most gray species started off humanish, and they survived biological warfare, nuclear warfare, space radiation. Those are the three usuals. So they're damaged, is why they look like that.
Who would have who was the ones declaring war on them that gave them this damage? Because what you're saying makes perfect sense. It really does. I mean, it's makes
all of
perfect sense.
all of 3D is this balance between good and evil, with most of us sort of in between. we're good one day, evil the next. Every
Mhm.
species has an agenda. Every species has survival needs, and sometimes those survival needs will conflict with someone else's survival needs. So there's
Right.
competition, and competition can lead to warfare, especially if you don't value the lives of the others.
True.
And our Earth's history is full of that. And we learned it from the Anunnaki who created us. In fact, our history is full of super soldiers and SSP folks who served the Anunnaki. It's only in the last 100 years that it's become humans doing it to us instead of ETs doing it to us.
So why do you think the humans have started doing it? Is it because, or to their own kind, basically, enslaving their own people, doing these horrific tests and projects, etc., that we've been talking about? Why are they? Do you think it's because they've become progressively more evil, as the Anunnaki DNA has been more and more integrated into them? And when I say evil, evil is a big word because it will encompass a lot of things, but let's just say progressively darker.
Um, what I've seen dealing with the family is they started off one way, and over the centuries, they've interbred with the other human species here. Okay, there's two species here. There's the Rh negatives and the Rh positives, and they're two species.
Yes.
They're able to interbreed, but if the female Rh negative carries the baby, sometime without medical intervention, the baby will die. Sometimes so does the mom. My personal family tree is full of it. When I did the French Canadian part of my family tree, there were so many dead babies and dead mothers that I sat and just sobbed. So many had been lost. And the father would just go find him another wife. He had kids that had to be taken care of, so he would just go buy another wife. And it was like, these people didn't matter. So we have two species here competing for resources, sometimes cooperating. I think we were better off when we didn't realize that it was blood-based, because then we just thought some people were smarter than others. Now we know it's blood-based and it's genetic and that they're actually two species.
Yes.
But the Rh negatives are who's in charge. They were left in charge by the Anunnaki. And they're not doing a good job because they see that there are too many of the rest of us for what they want to pull off for their agenda. And that's why we're having some of the issues that we are today, with diseases and poisoned food and poisoned air and poisoned water and poisoned medication. Yeah, but that's a whole nother topic that kind of muddies the water for what I was trying to talk about. But it goes along the same issue of the people who are running our world do not value human life. That's the core underlying people need to understand. They need to understand the people running our world do not value us. They do not value the children they kidnap for these programs. They do not value the children they leave behind. They do not value anybody. All you have to do is go to the World Economic Forum website and read for a while, and it becomes abundantly clear. So what I'm talking about is not to make it sound like Buck Rogers in the 21st century. It's not to argue religious beliefs. It's not to talk philosophy. It's to talk about, I was kidnapped as a 4-year-old. I was put through torture for 5 years, and then I was sent to Mars and handed over to the German breakaway people.
Explain
And
the German.
we are wandering into too many side issues. I'm sorry,
Explain.
but that's
No,
what's happening. Now, the
it's
German breakaway civilization, starting with Napoleon. Napoleon came through and destroyed the Holy Roman Empire. Now, most people in North America don't even know that there was a Holy Roman Empire, but it was 1,000 years of Central Europe along the spine of the Alps and to the east, because it included Poland, Czechoslovakia, which was then called Bohemia, Hungary, Romania, as well as Germany and Italy and Austria and Switzerland, that entire zone that became the Axis powers in World War II was the Holy Roman Empire. They each had their little countries. They were principalities, more like states in the United States. I think you have provinces in South Africa.
mhm.
Same idea. You had smaller areas that were easier to administrate. But there was an overarching country with an emperor who was a Habsburg for a long time. First, they were Welfen, which were cousins to the Merovingians in the West. I mean, literally cousins. The first Welfen and Merovovich were first cousins. So they were both bloodline families. And Charlemagne is who started the Holy Roman Empire. And with his death, it got split between his sons. And all of these people are still intermarrying. So that's all one bloodline. And so Napoleon's whole reason that the bankers backed him was he was to destroy the Holy Roman Empire. And he did. And it was after he accomplished that that the bankers decided to destroy him. They do this every war. They will back somebody, tell them they have a specific job to do, and once they have it done, they turn on them and vilify them and describe them as some sort of a monster. So nobody else wants to praise them or look into the fact that the bankers created them in the first place. This is all through European history for 1,000 years. And yeah, the records are in Latin. Church Latin. So what happened was the West and Russia made it clear that Germans were not welcome. period. It started, the worst part of it, in 1800 with Napoleon. But it had been leading for a long time. In the 1600s, they had gotten Enochian technology from Edward Kelly, who was Sir John Dee's assistant. Sir John Dee was Elizabeth I's court magician in England. He was also her first secret spy that she sent out into. She sent him to Bohemia. She sent him to see the emperor. The emperor got in trouble with the Pope because magician in his court, and so he sent John Dee back home. John Dee ended up in prison at the Vatican, but the technology that came from his Enochian studies, which today we would call that channeling. Okay, they got all of this information from beings that claimed to be angels but wanted blood sacrifices. Does that sound like angels to you? It doesn't to me. And so they got all of this technology, and so Edward Kelly took it to the emperor. The emperor turned the information over to the engineers. The Holy Roman Empire and Germany have had the best engineers on earth for the last 1,000 years. So this information was turned over to them, and they worked steadfastly, industriously, to create the technology base for this stuff. They had worked on it for a good 400 years by the time we saw Hannibal in the 20th century. Now, they had been allied, Prussia had been allies, Prussia and Tsarist Russia were allies of the United States from the time of Napoleon until 1900, when Teddy Roosevelt switched us to Britain and France. And that's why we came in on the side we did in World War I and World War II. But that whole century, we were working on the same things with them, which was miniaturization, which was power plants, which was artificial men, as in robotics, which was weaponry. Now, we saw a lot of that headway used in our Civil War in the 1860s. We went from wooden sailing ships that had been used for hundreds of years to suddenly we had steel-clad ships that were really hard to sink. We started having submarines. Where did this tech come from? It came from the Edward Kelly Enochian information that the German people had been working on for 200 years before that. So, year sounds off. So, the Germans reached a point, their understanding of World War I and World War II was that they were recreating the Holy Roman Empire, that they were reuniting all of the German-speaking peoples. That was their understanding of the war, that they were taking back what Napoleon had taken from them 100 years prior. That was their understanding. It was the West who decided that they were trying to take over the whole world. So
Squabbling cousins.
Exactly. Worse than that, some of these heads of states were literally siblings.
Exactly. And
They
they
were
start
all,
this
they,
nonsense.
they were the children of Queen
Right,
Victoria, children and
right.
grandchildren of Queen Victoria. They were literally siblings and first cousins. And they went to war with each other. And the Germans, when they realized they were never going to be allowed to have the Holy Roman Empire back, to have their what they considered their place in the world, they started planning to go off-world. They built ships. That was why the search for the ancient documents, because humanity has been in space before. The Frill Society, Frill Gesellschaft ladies were doing channeling, and they got blueprints for ships. They got descriptions of how to make them. They all of
Yes.
this stuff through channeling. Now, when you're channeling, you don't know who's talking to you. I don't
Right.
care who you are. So they had no idea where they were getting this stuff. Now, people think that the Frill Society and the Tula Society were totally separate things. No, they were the same families.
Yes.
The women were in the Frill, the men were in the Tula, and they all had dinner together.
Right.
So you have
Absolutely.
so you have these women who are channeling, they're coming up with these blueprints, they're using family money to build these things. Okay. They come up with this engine. Maria Orsic's father, her father gave the blueprints to Victor Schauberger, who got credit for the Riposina engine, which ran the Hannibal. Because God forbid a woman get credit for it. Yeah. Now, once they put these engines into the Hannibal ships, they had a problem. They gave off so much radiation. And this was the same time frame that Marie and Pierre Curie were studying radiation. Nobody knew radiation would kill you. So you
Wow.
had all of these ship crews that were dying these painful, horrible deaths, and they didn't know why. But
Wow.
during World War II, when their leader, I won't name him because I'll get in trouble in America for this, their leader filtered out all of the aristocracy who had put him in power and replaced them all with Jesuits. And from the time he did that, they started losing. Once the aristocracy paid attention to this, they knew Germany was going to lose a second world war, and they had seen what happened at the end of the first one. And so they took their work to Antarctica. There was an underground cave found in the area of Antarctica, Queen Maud's Land, which I believe actually belongs to Denmark. And they found this cave, and you could reach it through a submarine. And inside, because of hot springs, it was warm, almost tropical inside. And so they set up shop in there. And they would have been fine, except the Americans found the submarines coming to bring them supplies. So Admiral Byrd shows up. Well, by that point, they had figured out how to put weapons on a rotating ship and be able to shoot. Now, there's still some discussion whether it was a Alpha Draconian ship or a Hanabu that cut a battleship in half. And we know this happened, even though the official narrative is that it didn't. We know this happened because the Russians were sitting offshore watching. They filmed it. There's video. Admiral Byrd had his ass handed to him. He left, went home, told the press that the next war would be fought with weapons that could go from pole to pole in a very short period of time. He had to tell Congress why. Congress slapped him with a silence order. They shut him up. He had a diary journal, which he was one of those guys that it was a lot of self he made himself sound better than he was because he had to have money for his exploits. So he would really just, he was just wonderful. Just ask him. But Congress slapped him with a silence order. We call it a gag order.
Right.
And so the official story was that he was down there to map the place and that they ran into some sort of problem and had to come home, and that there were no ships lost. But there were. The Russians had documented it all. At that point, the Germans said, "We're never going to be left alone." They had won, so they tried to present terms to the United States. Truman was president then, and he refused to sign. So they buzzed the White House during the 1952 and 1956 elections, and finally Eisenhower signed the terms, which left it where they could pretend that they won, but there would be a German on every board of every business, and that everything would have to be handled through a liaison officer. The liaison officer is the head of the Trilateral Commission. And that is why no matter who is elected, nothing ever gets better. So the
It's so
Germans,
true what you're saying.
the
Wow,
Germans
never gets
in
better.
space are trying to keep the Americans under control. And through the Americans, everybody else. And they didn't save the German nation because it had surrendered. There was nothing they could do because the nation of Germany had surrendered unconditionally. So there was no getting around that. But yeah, they do occasionally come and pick up German people of German descent from all over the world, because they need the genetic diversity in their own population out there. But when they were setting up, because these ships were so poisonous to the crews, there's a insect species that has an empire. We call it the mantid empire because those insects resemble mantis, praying mantis on Earth. They made a deal with the Germans in space to give them regeneration technology because they felt sorry for them. These people were so desperate to get off world that they were willing to sacrifice the crews of their ships. And these bugs felt sorry for them. The people here on Earth certainly didn't. So they were being subjected to what they felt was genocide. And if you look into the real history of the period, not the propaganda, you will find why. We're no longer allowed to talk about that in America, so I can't give you details.
Right.
But there were 3 genocides in Germany during the 20th century, and you're only told about the middle one.
Was that really the Germans, or was it more Russian involved there as well, though? Because from what I've seen, there was a lot of the Second World War genocide committed a lot of it was done by Stalin, the Russians.
Um, I looked into the genocides of the 20th century, and 250 million people were killed by their own governments during the 20th century.
Yeah,
That doesn't count illnesses. That's just deliberate murder of their own people. 250
yeah. Stalin was renowned for that though, because he really thought
million.
about himself. I mean, he was an absolute coward.
I
Um,
don't think he was an absolute coward. I think he had an agenda that had been given to him. He was a Jesuit asset, and he was married to a Zionist Bolshevik. You remember hearing about the Bolsheviks? They were the ones who
yeah,
actually did the Russian Revolution, and they went through and murdered Slavs. Um, there was, I'm probably going to butcher this. Uh, I believe it's called the Holodomor.
mm,
And it was the genocide of 20 million people of Slavic descent in the Soviet Union.
mm. Yeah.
And that was
Um,
during World War II. And it continued afterwards, and they didn't keep records. But they were only killing people of Slavic descent.
right. Wow.
Yeah, there's a
What
lot
a,
of real nasty Middle European history. And when the Germans sat and took stock, because here they're in this cave under the ice in Antarctica, and they took stock. So instead of trying to get their country back, they thought, we have the means, let's go off world. Now, once they got off world, they found out every square centimeter was owned by somebody else. That there were only 2 ways to get land. One was leasing it from someone who owned it, and the only people that would lease to them were the Alpha Draconians, and they made sure nobody else would. The other way was to declare war. So they went to the moon first. Then they made it to Mars. And both places, the properties that the Draco let them have were kind of unsuitable for humans. And there wasn't enough water, it was too cold, things like that. So they declared war on the native beings on Mars. And that war lasted from 1964 until 1990.
native beings on Mars. What are we looking at there? What do they
We're
look
looking,
like? What are they?
um, there's 5 intelligent species on Mars that used to all be spacefaring. There are the ant people, And they basically look like ants, but they don't have that wasp waist that earth ants have. And they're 9 feet tall. And there's a raptor species that they look straight out of Jurassic Park, except they have crest feathers. That their feathers are long like peacock tails. And they're brown in the northern hemisphere and green in the southern. They're 9 feet tall. They have 9 feet tall. They're 2.5 meters about. And their claws are about this long and sharp as razors. And with one swipe, they can just gut you. In an unarmed fight, they will win every time. There's several bases of Draco on Mars. There's a city of 10 million Anunnaki. They're blue collar Anunnaki. They're not the ruling class. So they are the people that America calls tall whites. But they have an underground city, and the Germans. Now the Americans are there too, because to get out of their lease on their original base, they had to sublet to somebody else. So they sublet it to the CIA.
So the
And
Anunnaki, the tall whites, are those what people often refer to as the Nordics?
yes,
Okay.
yes, they're the same thing. And the tall whites have a base in Area 54 in Nevada. And it's close enough that they sometimes travel to Las Vegas and go gambling. My friend Misha Johnston has photographs of them at a roulette table.
What do they look like when they go out? I mean, do they
They
dress normal?
they dress normal, but their skin glows in the dark.
Right. So I was going to
So
say there's got to be something
yeah, their
that you
skin
can
glows.
tell.
Their skin is paper white, not like ours, and they have either gold, bright green, or bright blue eyes. But the gold is like a metallic gold. It's not like human amber. Some humans
Right.
have amber eyes, but this isn't like that. This is like a metallic gold. Their hair is usually white, like albinos, or sometimes a very pale blonde. I have seen one Anunnaki that had light brown hair, just one. The rest were all paper, paper white or they would look like albinos, except that they're white, not pink. Oh, some of them do have bunny eyes, like albinos. Um, so that's where the idea that demons have red eyes comes from, because frankly, an evil Anunnaki is every definition of demon in my book. I know everybody wants to tell me how good they are, but they abducted me in 2018 and tried to kill me. So I have this. I do not like them.
Why did they try and unalive you? And 2018, I mean, that's quite recent as well.
um,
What was the issue there?
The issue there was who I was in a past life, and they thought I was making too much headway,
Right.
exposing their power structure.
Right. Right. Yeah,
And
it's all
how dare they actually said the phrase, how dare a girl Lulu do this?
a girl Lulu.
Yeah, the term Lulu is for primitive slave workers. That's what they consider us, as primitive slaves. And a girl Lulu, how dare I? That, and I refuse to kneel before them. Hardest thing I've ever done. It's like it's hardwired into our brain to kneel before them. I forced myself to not.
Wow.
But yeah,
Wow. Wow.
it's
Wow. So
it has been a wild ride.
I can imagine. I just want to check because we spoke about the ant people, the raptors, right? The Anunnaki, the Draco, and the tall whites. What else? I think you said five. But did you say there's five species on
There's
Mars?
there's 5 species. The CIA archivist who verified
Okay.
said that the one thing in her report that I did not remember were the fly people. That they made up the majority of my reports. So I don't remember them, but they were in my file.
Well, I remember not too long ago, well, long time ago. What was that? Jeff, is it Jeff Goldblum? He
Yeah,
did a movie called The Fly. I will
yeah.
never ever forget that movie. It was one of the probably first horror type movies I ever saw. And I was like old, a teenager already, or quite old already when that
You
movie
should
came
see
out.
the original
That,
version that was in black and white. It wasn't
that is
legitimate.
so gruesome. That is so gruesome.
The
And
one
I
that's
have
in
to,
black and white was really gruesome. Um, I can't
so
think of the
these
actor that
creatures
was in it.
exist. They exist, the fly people. I've
Yes.
been waiting to hear about whether they actually are around, especially
Well,
after that gruesome movie.
according to Doris Neely, who was the CIA archivist who uploaded our files to the CIA computer, she had copies, but the day I went in for my spinal fusion, her house burned down. So she lost her copies. So yeah, she lost her house, she lost all the copies she had of our files. But but it was probably because she did 3 videos with me, and then came on to my Montauk Roundtable and verified all the people that were in it. So she was telling us that we were not imagining things. Now, when you remember some of these things, and they are so bizarre, and everybody you tells you you're schizophrenic, tell you you're hallucinating, tell you you're delusional, or flat out call you a liar. To get external validation is a really big deal. And she gave probably 20 of us external validation before they burned her house.
That was the problem, right? That was the
Right.
problem. Mm,
So yeah,
mm,
it was one thing for her to be retired and have documents. It was another thing for her to start verifying us and going on record as.
right.
So
Wow. That is so crazy. I would love to know more about that because I'll tell you what, the first time I was ever under psychic attack was with a fly creature. And I'll never forget it. I had a friend who was always under some kind of dark magics. He always had girlfriends spell casting him and going to these witches and doing
Mm.
things. I mean, whatever. And the one night he called me, it was like 2 o'clock in the morning, and he said to me, Chantelle, there's effing things in my room. I don't know what to do with it anymore. And the next minute, like, whoosh, I feel this thing literally coming through the phone. And I'm like, what the heck? So I sit up and I'm like, what is going on here? I tell you, it was the size of a human. And as I lay back, I could feel it like lifting. It lifted, try to get under my covers. It was like, it was incredible. And I just lay there and I just prayed and I just literally shot it with gold. And I had for this thing, it was there for at least an hour. I'm telling you, at least an hour. And every time I would feel like I'm just going to sleep, there it is again. But it looked like a fly and it was the size of a human. And
Yes.
it was like it landed like literally on top of me and all, and it wasn't in the physical. That's what I'm saying. It's not a physical entity. This was a spiritual
Well,
thing.
the ones on
And
Mars were physical entities, and in the far past, they would have been able to fly, but the event that created the Great Rift took their atmosphere. Now, it's not completely gone. It's like being high in the mountains. Um, I don't know what 7,000 feet translates to in meters, but it's what, 3.5 feet to
it's
a meter.
yeah,
So
three,
it's
just three, yeah, 3 foot, 3 foot, 30, 60,
three,
90, and plus 10, 3.3. It's 30 centimeters is a ruler, and that's 1 foot. So 30, 60, 90, so yeah,
I used to cut fabric at a retail store, and a meter was
100
3
centimeters.
feet plus a quarter
10,
foot.
yeah, yeah,
So
plus
it's
10
not,
centimeters exactly.
yeah, it's a little bigger than 3 feet. So I'm gonna
Yeah,
guess that 7,000 foot is somewhere 2,500 meters. No, that's too much. Probably. It's
that's that
it's a little
more
more than
even.
a little more than 2,000 meters. Okay.
That's like
So
2 kilometers. That's more than a mile.
yeah, a mile is 5,000. So yeah, it would be more than a mile.
Yeah.
So the atmosphere on Mars at ground level is like being at 7,000 feet or 2 kilometers on Earth. Now, if you've ever been to one of those mountains, you know that you can breathe. It's not going to kill you, but you have
Mhm.
trouble moving around. You have trouble doing things. You try to exercise, you find yourself gasping for air. That's what it's like ground level on Mars. It's you can adjust to it where you can do light work, but you can't do heavy work without an oxygen tank. So also, in the daytime, it gets to be nice, comfortable, 75 Fahrenheit. I can't remember what it's 20 something and it's the nice temperature in Celsius. And it's you don't have to wear jackets, long pants and short sleeves is perfect in the daytime, in the summer. But as soon as that sun goes down, there's not enough air to keep it warm.
Right.
And it drops to below zero massively. Things not meant for Mars freeze. So there is a surviving ecosystem where the air is thicker and it's warm enough for liquid water. The place is crawling with small insects and reptiles, snakes, lizards, toads, all that stuff. It all goes dormant at night so that the freeze doesn't kill them. They've adapted to it. There's not very many mammals because the mammals and the birds require more food, more
Temperature.
air, and a more reasonable temperature. There are birds that burrow and they come out at sunset. They're blackbirds. They're a little bit bigger than sparrows. I think sparrows are everywhere. They're about this big, and they come up from their burrow and they just spread, and it's just the most amazing sight to watch them. They can't fly very high because there's not enough air pressure. But they just cover the area, and they're thick, and then they go back in their burrows. I don't know what they eat. Oh, I didn't mention the Mars humans. That's what I forgot. There are humans on Mars, and genetically they're the same as us. They are leftovers from the last time humanity went out into space. They're a little taller because Mars has a lower gravity. Their lungs are bigger because of the atmosphere being thin. They have a yellow-orange cast to their skin. We think it's diet, but we don't know what they eat because anytime we come into the area, they would leave. Not that I blame them. When the Germans first came there, because they have a cultural thing that the breasts are the providers of food and holy and all that. Their women go topless, and the German men would rape them. So did the American men when they showed up. And so when Earth humans appear in an area, they will just pack up and leave. But you can go through the NASA Mars photos, and you'll see rock shapes that look like skulls or faces, heads. That means there's one of their shelters there, because Mars has those sandstorms that cover the entire planet. That for months on end, they'll just circle the planet. And the skull would tell any sentient being that this is a shelter, that you can find safety. Why they picked that, I don't know, but they did. So they're
I'm
kind of.
interested.
I've got photos, but we've been at this for 2 hours, so I think maybe next time I can do
We'll
NASA
carry on.
photos of Mars.
I would love that. It's super interesting. I was about to say, Shame, you must be getting quite tired. But I would just like to be, my final question to you is on the mantis people. Perhaps you can tell me a little bit about what they like. I've also heard from other survivors about the mantis people, and I ask especially about them because the praying mantis is a little creature that is it's like the insect for the Khoisan people. You know, the Khoisan people have the praying mantis and the gemsbok with the strong and giraffe, basically. That would be, and they
Hmm.
are the First Nations people. So I'm interested to know about the mantis and why the mantis then would be so important to the Khoisan people who are First Nation people. I'm just wondering if there's a
There's
connection there.
the Mantis Empire is almost as big as the Draconian Empire, and they kind of overlap and have a disputed territory. There's the Orions, the Draco, and then the Mantis. and their empire is what was described in the book and movie Starship Troopers. Robert Heinlein wrote it. They're a hive mind. They don't have freedoms. They think very differently from us, but they do have emotions. Um, they have a very individuals don't matter kind of attitude. So I was surprised when the Germans said that they had taken compassion on them when they first came out of space. Um, so yeah,
Interesting. So interesting. Gosh,
they're
that's
they're a,
definitely got.
they're very intelligent. They have incredible technology, um, and they're healers. They do a lot of healing of other races, but
Hmm. Makes sense if you think about them, because I'm thinking of them in connection with the Khoisan, and the Khoisan are natural healers. They will obviously use the roots and the fruits and whatever from
mm,
earth, and that when a Khoisan person hunts, for example, it's always done with so much consciousness. They will first connect to the spirit of the animal, and then the father will take his son out on the first hunt, for example. And they know that when they go, that the spirit of that animal has already agreed to give its life. So it's done with honor. I mean, they'll use their certain poisons, they will dart an animal and it will last for maybe a couple of hours. And if you haven't gotten the animal by then, it's go you know, and they will always track it. There's a lot of honor in the way a
mm.
Khoisan person treats nature and the earth. And that's why I'm like, if you say they're
Our,
healers,
our
that's very interesting.
our Native American people uh, generally operate
Yes.
that way too.
Yes, yeah, I think, and the Austrian original people as well,
Mhm.
that's the same sort of thing. So it's very interesting for me that, wow. But Shane Penny, I know, I mean, you must be getting so tired. And this has been unbelievably interesting. And of course, we just starting to scratch the surface of the hive.
Well,
Right.
Mars is a big place.
Now, I'm super excited to
I
to to
was
get
on
more.
Mars for 25 years, so there's a lot there.
I am definitely looking forward to the next installment of Life on Mars and what it's like. I think it's fascinating. And thank you so, so, so much for sharing your
Well, thank you
journey
for
and this
having me.
story with us. Yeah,
Thank you
wow.
for having me back.
Unbelievable. Appreciate you and our Kim as well. Now, Kim was also talking a while ago about the ant people, but they're using the spider people as their like drug mules. I mean, I was like sitting there still
The
trying to
ant,
wrap my head around.
yes, yes, the ant people on Mars keep the Mars spiders like shepherds keep sheepdogs,
Gee,
but
I mean, now you
they
see,
have a telepathic connection.
but it's like, yeah, I can see it. Now, that to me was a very shocking thing. I mean, I was like, what? Every now and again, it's like, no. I mean, listen, I've heard some way out there stories on this platform. That was
I
like,
bet, yeah.
come on. I mean, like, I can imagine these spiders, like, being like a drug mule and carrying the ants' weed, the ant people's weed. How hilarious is that? How
Um,
funny is that?
our
Anyway.
our team comes up with some good descriptions. Yeah, I recently had him on my show. His alter Jacob came forward talking about the abuses in the video industry. And it was, I was freaked out for about 2 weeks because we talked about it before we recorded a couple of sessions. And so when we recorded, I was sitting there in total dissociation, so I didn't interfere with his descriptions. It was probably the quietest I have ever been on my own show.
I definitely I want to go and watch that show. I know you've sent me the link. I haven't watched it yet, but I would definitely I'm gonna go and
Yeah, it
watch
was.
that show. I can
I've
imagine,
I've
yeah.
I've had people contact me and say they can't stop crying. So yeah, it's
Yeah,
it's definitely not for the
mm,
weak.
mm. He's mentioned quite spoken about that on Ara as well a couple of months back, music industry and absolutely the abuses and the cloning and the graping. I will
Yeah,
definitely go and catch that.
this is dark. The darkest video
Mm,
I've ever done.
okay, we'll go and catch
So
that.
keep that in mind.
Pe Penny, is there anything that you would just like to wrap up with for today? And yeah, where can people find you? We will definitely have your
You've
details in the
got all my
description area
links.
again. Okay. All right. So is there
Um,
anything any announcements other than that you'd like to share with our audience?
I'm going, if you're in England, I'm going to be speaking at Bases in December, but I'm going to be on Zoom.
Zoom.
I didn't have the money for the flight, so Miles Johnston has graciously allowed me to come by Zoom.
Beverly
And
Rhodes is going to be talking at that conference as well. We spoke about that the other day. So I saw your name. She showed me the flyer and I saw your name there. I went,
uh,
two of
yeah,
our guests. Yay.
uh, uh, several of the folks I know, Randy Kramer, Drago Reed, uh, me, of course. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, we're all SSP folks. So it's going to be
I
more
look,
disclosure based rather than the usual mix of psychics and such. I think there's at least two psychics going to be there, but it's going to be more experiencers, survivors.
wonderful.
So
Thank you, Penny. I
thank you
really
for having me.
appreciate you. Sorry, did I talk over you there?
No, it's okay. I'm just, am I supposed to hit the stop record?
No, 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 no. I'll do that now. And I want
Okay.
to just say to you, thank you so much for sharing your story. Hectic, but really looking forward to hearing more and just yeah, learning, what you sharing. We really appreciate that. Thank you. And thank you to our viewers. Always glad to have you guys here. Um, I'll catch you soon. And up until then, God bless you all, everybody. Take good care. Thank you, Penny.